The rectangular survey system, or government survey system, is a primary focus for the national portion of the real estate exam, and it requires a strong grasp of both spatial logic and basic mathematics. This system was designed to provide a more standardized way of describing land than the older metes and bounds method by using a giant grid that covers most of the United States west of the original 13 colonies. At the heart of this grid are two intersecting lines that serve as the point of beginning for all descriptions in a specific region. The vertical line is the principal meridian, and the horizontal line is the baseline. You must remember that there are many principal meridians across the country, but each legal description will reference only one specific meridian. Parallel to these lines are others that create the grid itself. Lines running east and west parallel to the baseline are called township lines, and they are spaced 6 miles apart. The horizontal rows they create are called township tiers. Lines running north and south parallel to the principal meridian are called range lines, and they are also 6 miles apart. The vertical columns they create are called ranges. Where a township tier and a range intersect, you find a square of land called a township, which measures 6 miles by 6 miles. This gives a township a total area of 36 square miles. One of the most common traps on the exam is confusing the dimensions of a township with its total area. So always read the question carefully to see if it asks for the linear miles or the square miles. Within each of these 36 square mile townships, the land is further divided into 36 smaller squares called sections. Each section is exactly 1 square mile, or 640 acres. The numbering of these sections is a frequent source of exam questions because it follows a unique pattern. Instead of starting at the top left and moving across like you are reading a book, the system starts section 1 in the northeast corner, which is the top right. It then numbers to the left until it reaches section 6 in the northwest corner. Then it drops down and moves back to the right, so section 7 is directly below section 6, and section 12 ends up below section 1. This back-and-forth snake-like pattern continues until section 36 is placed in the southeast corner. You should specifically remember section 16 because the exam often refers to it as the school section since it was traditionally set aside for public education. You also need to be prepared for math problems involving the subdivision of a section. A legal description might read as the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of the west half of section 20. To solve this, you start with the full section size of 640 acres and divide by each denominator in the description. In this case, you would take 640 divided by 4, then divided by 4 again, and finally divided by 2, which results in 20 acres. A major trick to watch out for is the word "and" in a description. If the question asks for the acreage of the southeast quarter of the northwest quarter and the northeast quarter of the southwest quarter, you are looking at 2 separate parcels. You must calculate the acreage for each part independently and then add them together to get the final answer. Do not simply multiply all the denominators together if that word "and" is present, or you will get the question wrong. A helpful mnemonic for the grid lines is that range lines run north and south like a long-range telescope pointing toward the poles. Finally, remember that 1 acre is 43,560 square feet, which you can memorize using the phrase 4 old ladies driving 60 miles per hour on Route 55. If the exam asks you to convert your acreage calculation into square feet, you will multiply your final acreage by this number. Another point of confusion on the exam is the total number of square feet in a mile. 1 linear mile is 5,280 feet. And because a section is 1 square mile, it means a section is also 5,280 feet by 5,280 feet. If you multiply those numbers, you will see where the 640 acres comes from. Sometimes the exam will throw a curveball by asking about correction lines or fractional sections. Because the Earth is curved and these grid lines are straight, the lines would eventually overlap as they move toward the North Pole. To account for this curvature, Correction lines are established every 24 miles to keep the townships as close to 6 miles square as possible. While you likely won't have to do math on the curvature, you should know that the term government lots refers to those irregular tracts of land that cannot be divided into perfect quarters due to water features or the correction lines themselves. Always focus on the denominators of the fractions when calculating land size. If a question gives you the north half of the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter, you are looking at 640 divided by 2, then divided by 4, and then divided by 4, which equals 20 acres. If the question then asks for the total square footage of that parcel, you must take that 20 and multiply it by 43,560. Mastering these specific numbers and the directional numbering of sections will ensure you pick up every available point on the national portion of the exam.